Hey guys, what's cracking? Godspan here, coming at you with another tier list video. Today it's going to be on the Overtriggers. So, with Festival Collection having been fully revealed for 2023, we got not one but two Overtriggers, which, to all of y'all who have been complaining about OTs, economy included, then, oh the joy, there's two of them, more of these busted ass cards. But hey, you know what, fine, it's still kind of hype in its own way, and I decided why not make a tier list, because I haven't done one of these in a while, and I have a few thoughts here about these OTs, and I think I got the list down to a really nice, respectable arrangement. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So before we do though, let me give you a couple ground rules here. For one thing, this is about standard format. So I don't want y'all to come to me about why such and such OT is super busted in premium because my cool, wicked premium deck can make it do a bajillion things. It can make my dog do handstands on a skateboard. I don't care. That's premium. I don't want to talk about premium implications very much because for one thing, I'm not as well versed in premium these days, so I want to stick to a format where I know what I'm talking about. And that aside, I'm also just more interested in the standard deck kind of implications. So I'm going to be talking about the standard decks here rather than the premium decks. So that's rule number one. Rule number two is, of course, the standard obligatory rule, which is, this is my opinion. I'm going to say it as I perceive it. So if you guys think that different OTs are higher or lower on the list, well, then that's about you. I respect your opinion, but this is going to be about my opinion today. But I'm going to try and be as objective as I can. Oh, and one final thing, we're only going to be going over the 6 main nation OTs along with the 3 Cray Elemental OTs. So none of the collab sets are going to be included in this one. So sorry about that. We're not going to be talking about the busted Shaman King OTs or stuff like that. So it's going to be the main 9. All right, cool. Let's get right into it. So starting off, we've got Olbaria. Now, Olbaria used to be kind of a neat fringe option in some decks, particularly there was a couple of OTs that were not very accessible for a couple of nations. We're going to go on those, but for the time being, Olbaria was kind of a good replacement. But now with the new Festival Collection, he's been kind of dethroned as the generic OT to go into in lieu of whatever OT is inherent in your nation. So he's just simply not worth. The dude has been straight up power crap. His effect, which allows you to do instances of 100 million rather than just one instance, it was pretty cool, especially if your attack patterns were such that you had a couple of rear guards standing up and maybe they were re-standing rear guards. You know, maybe you could have done something with that, but that doesn't really matter anymore because of this guy over here, which we'll get into him later on. But yeah, he's not worth it anymore. There's better options now, whether it's generic or your specific nation. Okay, Dragveda. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got something that is absolutely bonkers. Dragveda is stupid good, dummy powerful. So why is that? So at first glance, you would read the card and think, oh, just stand the Vanguard. You know, it's simple, sweet. That doesn't sound that impressive, but it's really goddamn impressive. So let's just conceptualize all the things that comes with standing your Vanguard. You not only get another attack, you get to do more drive checks, and this is the kicker, you get to use their on attack skills again. Now, as opposed to a nation like, let's say, Dark States here, which, spoiler warning, the Dark States OT doesn't interact very well with a lot of the decks in the Dark States nation. That's not a problem. There's a lot of Dragon Empire decks that can abuse the frick out of Dragveda. Let's go over them right now. So you've got Mahar Nirvana, which can give you 2 instances of the triple drive. That's really good. You've got Nirvana Java, which is even a little bit more stupid because you get to use the skill to restand across Overdress unit a second time. And because of Miraz Virina, it's free. You can just countercharge it right back. Mwah, 2 extra attacks right there. What else? You got Bafsagra, really huge ass numbers, and with the crit, it goes again. That's pretty good. Overlord can get 3 attacks in a turn, especially if you restand with the OT prior to using the end skill. So now 2 of those 3 Vanguard swings can be with 100 million. Lovely. Kamayura can recall more units from the soul. That's more multi-attack. Shoujo can do stuff. Ooh, and let's not even forget about Griffogila, right? Yeah, Griffogila with this OT is pretty goddamn insane. Although, I guess it kind of doesn't count because it's a nationless card. But still, with Griffo, you can get 8 attacks with Dragveda. That's I don't even want to imagine how much of an overkill turn that is in this format. But it is as it is, right? Dragveda just combos way too much with stuff. And even just at the base level, right? You look at a couple of these things, right? Like this guy here. You think, oh, okay, well, multi-attack is pretty strong. But this is a multi-attack that gives you drive checks, which are already more powerful and more pressuring than, let's say, a rearguard multi-attack. And because of all the combos, you can spread out to even more convoluted shenanigans. So, yeah, Dragveda just has to be over here at the top tier. An absolutely insane card. Way too much you can go with it. And at the end of the day, you really can just use this at any stage of the game, whether it's in the beginning and get some early beatdown aggression and draw power for you, or in near the late game where you're just trying to close out. Dragveda is always going to be good to use. So yeah, he's over here sitting in the S tier. Okay, so Gamagahel, he's sitting in the C situational tier. So his skill, I was referencing it a little bit before, his skill is a bit weird. So 10,000 power and a crit for the rest of the game for all your Vanguards. That sounds pretty impressive on paper, right? You look at that as opposed to this, which seems pretty okay on paper. This seems really bonkers on paper, but it's the opposite. It's just whatever. Sure, yeah, you can essentially get an extra critical trigger on your Vanguard for the rest of the game. Woo! But not a lot of decks in Dark States even really abuse that. The only decks I can think of that could potentially abuse that is Grade 4 Bruce and Greedon. Those are the only two decks which have restanding Vanguards and have massive Vanguard hit pressure, whether it's from triple driving or with Greedon having huge numbers and also triple driving. He's pretty nuts that way. That's it. Everything else, ranging from Chrono Jet, I mean, I guess Chrono Jet can kind of use it, but then things like Lukier, which doesn't interact with it at all. Viamance Bruce doesn't really care about it that much. I digress. Most of the decks don't really need it, right? So it's just kind of whatever. I can see where some people are even running Obaria over it, just because having an extra instance of 100 million power for rearguard pressure is more prevalent than Vanguard pressure, because most of the Dark States decks aren't that Vanguard centric. I guess Favonir could also use it a bit, but Favonir always is coming in with power and a crit. It is a restanding Vanguard though, so I guess it makes sense. It's situational, right? It depends on the deck you're using. Another thing that makes it situational is the timing. So if you hit it on turn 1 swing like an absolute god, then yeah, this is one of the best OTs in the game, because literally every time since then is going to be 10k in a crit. But what if you hit it like near the end, right, on your finishing turn? It just amounted to, you know, the normal OT effect and then an extra critical trigger. That's it. So it really doesn't pay your investment unless you're collecting dividends over the course of several turns. So the later you check it, the less value it's going to give you. And that's kind of sucky. So yeah, he's going down in situational tier. So Amar Noah is chilling right next to his Dark States compatriot. So Amar Noah's skill to grant drive checks to the rear guards, you know, it's pretty good, I will admit. Depending on when you hit this, it could be pretty powerful. But just like him, he's situational. However, unlike him, he's situational in a different way. So you need board presence with your rear guards in order to maximize his benefit, preferably grade 3s, which Bastion is all about that. So Bastion really does cook in the kitchen with Amar Noah. But then you have other versions which maybe not so much are going to really like do much about it. For instance, Minerva will get a couple drive checks out of it, but it's mainly about the Vanguard, so it doesn't care so much about it. So on and so forth. There's a lot of other Keter decks. I mean, Youth could use a little bit, but you're already kind of getting drive checks outside of that. If anything, Amar Noah could lead you closer to the deck out, and that's kind of scary, but they're usually using like grade 2s or whatever. So it's just kind of iffy, right? It depends on how good your setup is. Now, having said that, one thing that's kind of funny, the fact that they're in the same tier here, is Amar Noah's preferred timing is a bit different from this, almost in the opposite sense, really. Whereas you want to check this early, Amar Noah is dead if you check it on turn 1 or turn 2. You basically have nothing on the field usually, so who cares? Maybe you get one extra drive check. Wow, what a big payoff, right? You want a later game setup. If anything, you probably want to hit this on turn 3 or turn 4, because the drive checks are good for pressure, yes, but they give you more cards, right? So getting more cards can help keep you in the game, extend your plays, etc., etc. That's more often than not where you want to hit it, but unless you're playing something like Hexa, you don't get to decide when you hit the frickin' Overtrigger. So yeah, that's very situational as well, plopping him down into the C tier. Bless Favor. So Bless Favor is actually pretty good, I will admit. At first, people were kind of like, whatever. It's like, yeah, one trigger each. I think a lot of the community has grown a bit more compassionate for our boy or girl. I don't know the gender of dragon. I try to figure out. So Bless Favor's skill, which just mimics every other trigger if you exclude, well, standard triggers, I guess, is a really nice mid-range skill. What the value of it is that you basically get a bit of everything, and you rarely ever have an OT that feels really dead, you know? Whether it's for the crit, the front, the heal, the extra draw, it's giving you a lot of good stuff here, and it's very good when you're in a bit of attrition game state. Getting that extra heal and the extra draw in particular is just so nice, because it just helps keep you going the game, much like how this keeps you going in the game. But the confirmed nature of the draw and just having a 5th heal in your deck, whether you check it offensively or defensively, is a very powerful boon. It's also a 9th crit on top of that, which is really solid, and also an extra front. It just gives you such good variety and stability. I like the fact that no matter where you hit this first, which if you hit it on the first turn, then it's probably more for your crit than anything and the extra draw. But if you hit in the later turns, things like the heal in the front row, when you're more established and, you know, maybe trying to survive, yeah, those are going to come up as well. It's just got so many varying benefits that what makes it really good is you hardly ever miss out when you check this Overtrigger. So there's a lot of love. Eldo Breath, yeah, all the way up to the top, boy. I made a post about this video prior, trying to hype people up about it, and someone in the comments said, oh, I think I know which goes in the top. Yeah, we do. It's Eldo Breath. As a matter of fact, go in front of this thing is just absolute sack incarnate, right? We all know what it does. You check the stupid OT, you double everything on the field, and then they get double their crit as well. It's a great way to completely blow them out of the game, and probably the stupidest part of this thing is that you can make something that got 100 million get over 200 million now. So even if the opponent checks defensive OT, if they don't have a PG, they're done. That's just, oh my god, it's awful. It's so gross. And there's so many decks in Brandt that really abuse this kind of a card, right? Think about it. Roer Battle Princess, right? They already have crits on the field because of Seraph Snow, so now they're getting more crits. You look over Dragveda. Dragveda using the OT is the greatest freaking win con in this entire format, right? Even Grifogila can't cook quite the way Dragveda can cook with this, because doubling that Overtrigger effect, which then doubles everything again, is just absolutely bonkers. If you hit a crit right before it, it is possible to slam your opponent with 16 criticals. Yay, I think I'd rather just chug a jar of poison at that point. What other decks can use it? Well, Vanguard is a restanding Vanguard, so you double its power and crit, and it's going again. That's really scary. You can use it in something like Welstra, because Welstra is already making the opponent extremely small, so doubling the power of your units can be really scary in that kind of a matchup. It just goes on and on. It's so generically viable because it just turns everything into a massive beater, and the potential to just close out a game right then and there because of all the extra crits running around. It's just sheer blowout incarnate. Now, while I do like the fact that Dragveda doesn't necessarily need you to be fully established to get the full value of it, just a restanding Vanguard is a restanding Vanguard that's really powerful. This can lose out a little bit if you're just swinging advanced simply. It's just like, oh, okay, whatever, you know, it's cool. It makes the one dude really strong and crit heavy, but that's about it. So you do need to establish a little bit, but it's so bare minimum to just completely wipe out the opponent that, yeah, it's absolutely insane. It's just the OTK card, you know, that's it. It just kills you. All right, so I chose Grizael, but this is just every lyrical OT because they all have the same effect, because, you know, Grizael's my favorite. Don't at me in the comments. So yeah, this is going right smack dab in the middle of pretty solid. Yeah, it is just that. It's pretty solid. You can get 10k to all of your rear guards for the rest of the fight, so it's a very similar stipulation to what Gamaga Held has. However, what puts her above Gamaga Held is that, unlike him, who is preferred in the early game and pretty damn useless in the late game, even in later sections of the game, giving 10,000 power to all of your rear guards continuously is a very powerful benefit. it gives you really strong plus 20k to your columns, and if they happen to have restanding units and things like, I don't know, media or whatever, then they can abuse that more times on top of it. You just get a lot of benefit. And even if you check it on, say, like turn 3 or turn 4, if you get just one turn after that, then you reap the benefit of 20k columns yet again, and an extra 10k to your Vanguard if you have a booster for it. It's just a sheer buttload of power going into it, and you don't really need to do anything for it. Hell, it even allows you to play very minimalist, because if you check this rather early, well, in addition to just being able to beat your opponents up the head with just almost impossibly huge columns every turn, like you're playing Asha Bloom or some crap in G, you can also be cheeky and just call, you know, maybe a couple cards to the front row, and they're already decent beaters because of the 10k. You can do so little effort and keep your advantage because you're already ensured decent power lines because of this freaking Overtrigger. So yeah, that's what really makes it stand above, is that even though it is somewhat situational like these, the situations when it's good are a lot more broad, and the benefit is rather generically nice. Now, I wouldn't say it's necessarily really good like something like Blessed Favor, because yeah, it does give you some power, but it does require you to establish the board and keep the board established. So there's ways to kind of make the OT not feel that great if the opponent is, you know, Gondivaing you and just retiring the entire field. You know, it's Gondivaing time. But they can also just look at you and say, okay, well, there's a lot of columns here, but it still can simply be PG'd or block if you don't have high enough numbers with it. So yeah, you know, they're pretty big numbers, but it's not impossible to guard in some cases. You don't really have ridiculousness going on in the other turns, but still, if you scale it in the early game, like you check this on turn 1, then oh boy, yeah, it probably is all the way up here, because that's just too many turns of dealing with it. But in the late game, it is annoying, but it's not that much of a blowout. So that's what's going to keep it at pretty solid. Because, I mean, hell, these have crit pressure, and this probably comes with crit pressure too, just drive checks and stuff. All right, so now we've got the 2 new Cray Elemental ones, and here comes the red OT, all the way up in A tier. Yeah, this thing is definitely the winner, chicken dinner of the 2 new OTs. This dude's skill is pretty goddamn good. When you check it, you're able to choose a rear guard, and it gets the skill to restand. And if you chose not to give a rear guard that restand skill, you could then instead draw a card and call a card from hand to the field. So one way or another, you're getting a multi-attack. It is a multi-attack OT, very much in the same way that Dragveda is a multi-attack OT. I guess it kind of makes sense. They're both, you know, like fiery type cards, so they're more based on aggression and multi-attack. Yeah, whatever. That's nerd stuff. So we're all into nerd stuff anyway. So this OT has a lot of uses, and just being able to get that restand has a lot of utility in its own right. Very similar to how this has utility for restanding Vanguards, this has utility for restanding rearguards. Imagine putting this in, say, Zorga with Roaming Prison Dragon. It has an extra 10k in a crit and probably a lot more power to it, just because, you know, you're playing Zorga. So that thing can now attack twice with the crit pressure and huge power. That's really nice. As a matter of fact, this can give 100 million to anything, and then also the skill to restand. So you're getting 2 instances of using 100 million power. And this card is a direct power creep to Albaria for that reason. This gives you 2 instances of 100 million power. This also gives you 2 instances of 100 million power, but it's on multi-attack and a couple different ways to ensure that multi-attack. That's very strong. It's almost directly a power creep, in fact. It's going to end up being the replacement OT, in fact, for a lot of different decks. This is situational for a lot of Darkshade decks. They're just going to go, wee-hoo, right? Just put it all the way to the bottom and, you know, just put them there, right? They're, if you're playing something like Viam and Spruce, this is a great way to get multi-attack. If you have a really solid column, then you just pressure even more. Maybe even get something like Patrick going or whatever for swinging extra times. Maybe Julian's can swing extra times. Giving extra restands to inlet pulses can be really annoying, right? There's a lot of stuff that you can do with grade 3 rear guards. Bastion has huge ass numbers. Imagine trying to restand those extra times. That's really scary. There's so much shenanigans that can take place with the restands, and just it's also just a multi-attack and, you know, 100 million each time. That's really scary. That's frightening. So this OT is legitimately going to end up being the OT that a few different decks run, because it just interacts better than whatever OT they ended up having. I can even see some people saying that this is better than Bless Favor, because even though Bless Favor is pretty even keeled and useful most of the game, this multi-attack is also really goddamn strong, because unlike something like this OT or this OT here, which requires you to have established fields, this technically doesn't. This could literally just have you draw a card and call something for the extra multi-attack. So if you left positions open or had to, then yeah, this can get you into another attack lickety split. So I really dig that about it. It's very versatile and just viable in most decks. The only decks that wouldn't be running this are either stuff that interact in their OT in a very trippy specific way, or they happen to be Dragon Empire or Brandt Gate, which already have the nuts in an OT. That's why he's all the way up here, man. I almost wanted to put him in Absolutely Insane, but his blowout potential is not what Dragveda's and this Senor Overdress is. I mean, Overdress speaks for itself, and Dragveda, being a restanding Vanguard, is more impactful and combo-y than a restanding Rearguard because of all the aforementioned on-attack skills and the drive trigger pressure coming with it. So that's really the distinction between them, but this is at the top of A for sure. On the other hand, we have this really trashy blue OT. So blue OT skill gives a unit a crit and then can recur any card from the drop to the hand. That's it. Yeah, there's almost zero offensive pressure. It's just a nice crit. And getting back one card is cool. Yeah, that's a +1. But, dude, this gives you a +1. This gives you a +1 potentially. This gives you a +2. This can give you I don't know, could be a +4 if you have 2 grade 3s on the rear guards. There's a lot of pluses going on already. So +1 doesn't really sound that cool. Sure, you can add back a PG or a Persona Ride or something like that, but this is an Overtrigger. An Overtrigger is supposed to be the kapow, you're dead, mother effer kind of card, but nothing about this is kapow, you're dead outside of just one critical. That's it. That's it. I can't name one deck. I can't name one deck that would run this over at bare minimum Volnut here. The Fire OT is just so more impactful in decks compared to what this guy brings to the table. It's so sad. It's just never going to see play. Never. I can't think of a deck that would use it. Much like how no one's going to use Obaria because of this guy. He literally just said F you to the Cray Elementals and became the one that tops them all. Easily. Easy GG for the Fire OT here. So yeah, he's just going to be chilling and not worth, because he's not worth. Okay, so that's it for my OT tier list. It's kind of a nice even spread here, with the middle being ran alone by dear old Lyrical here, holding the 4 at middle of the road, which, hey, you know, middle of the road's pretty good. I like this OT a lot, and that's not just for the aesthetic. So yeah, if you have any comments, anything you liked about my tier list, anything you dislike about my tier list, let me know in the comment section below. Again, this is for standard, this isn't for premium, so I don't want to hear about that. But if in the context of standard, there's some things that you concur or differentiate from this list, I would love to hear that. These two OTs do bring up a bit of design space, although personally I think the Fire one's the only thing worth looking at. Maybe there's something I'm missing about the blue OT. I would really appreciate something of a saving grace, because I like this one's artwork better than this one, and I just think that maybe there could be some cool stuff here, but as it stands, it's just a nothing burger of a card. So yeah, and with that said, if you did like this content, then I've got a lot of other tier lists down in my channel down below. You can also check out other kinds of videos that take your fancy, such as top 10s, discussion videos, fight nights, a lot of different stuff. As a matter of fact, I've got a top 10 Overdress card fights coming out pretty soon. So if you're interested in the anime or watched all the anime, then go ahead and check that out. I'm trying to put in a bit of effort into that one. So please, I hope to see you there. And with that said, take care. God bless.